Hello and welcome back to the Engerati studio. I'm now joined by Perry Stoneman from Capgemini, and Perry, you and I have been talking a number of times, and you've done a number of interviews with us in written format on Engerati, so it's nice to meet you and welcome you to the studio.
Thank you, Adam.
And one of the things you sort of say in some of the briefings we've had is, Apple, Google and Amazon are coming. And I'm just going to stop there and just let you, in your own words, say what that means for this industry.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, Adam. Apple, Google, Amazon are coming. The world's gone digital. We're in a revolution right now, a digital revolution. And Capgemini with MIT did a study 4 years ago, and it showed that digital technologies are changing our lives. And if you haven't noticed, everybody here is walking around with a smartphone, smart device, and it's how we want to interact with the world, etc. And if you think about it, who are the companies that are dominating the landscape? Google, Amazon, Apple, and they're changing how consumers want to interact. And they're putting devices in the household and starting to have conversations about everything, retail, automotive, but they're also starting to have energy conversations. And they're good at having conversations with customers. So if I was a utility and I saw the Nest in my customer's house, I'd be very interested to understand what the end game is going to look like on those devices.
And do you think the utility, and let's couch that to say, the part of the utility that is retailing the energy to the customers, because we've got unbundled utilities, so they're effectively energy retailers. Do you think they actually have a grasp of where this could go and what their role is in this new world, or do you think this industry is like going, hang on a minute, this is, we don't know?
I think it's the latter, Adam. They don't know. They know there's something coming, but they're not sure what it is. But think about your own situation. You live in the UK. How does your retailer communicate to you today? I'm betting it's paper. You don't have to answer that.
No, it is paper. It is paper.
It's paper.
Yeah.
And wouldn't you prefer to have a 3-click step operations on outages or bill, or if you had a question, you would go to your smart device?
Sure.
So we're all in the same boat. Consumers want to have that option, and the retailers are going to have to be able to provide it.
And one of the other things that I've heard is, and again, this didn't directly come from you, so I'm going to couch it as such, but I always ask commentators, it's like, everybody's talking about the utility business model needs to change, and they've been saying that for about 2 or 3 years, and I haven't really seen much of the change happening. And one commentator made the point was that actually utilities aren't going to be making their money selling energy. That's not how they can make their money. So how do they need to change, and where do they need to change to? And more importantly, do they understand that their car is broken and they need to get out and get into the new car?
Well, on the 28th of this month, we just published our European Utility Market Observatory, and an item in that report said electricity is a commodity now. So if you're running a commodity business, what are the options? You're going to be pushed to the lowest cost provider, or you're going to break away from that model and become a services-based company. So I think the future of utilities is to provide energy services. I'd love to be able to rent solar from my utility, stay connected to the grid. I'd love to have them come in and do an energy audit, and I'd love to have a dialogue with them through smart devices on how I can change behaviors in my household to conserve energy and be more efficient.
And so this is somewhat like what British Gas are trying to do, where their ads actually have completely changed from buy our gas to here is, we'll service your thermostat and we'll service your boiler and all that sort of stuff. Is that the shift? Is that where?
Yeah, British Gas created a video a couple of years ago. I haven't seen the latest that they are marketing in the UK, but they definitely put out a visionary video where it showed a happy family using solar storage, and then when they left for the day, the service agent came. I mean, they really did in that video map out what the future is, and it is a services-based business.
And so when we look at this world, I think it's important for us to almost carve that utility word up a little bit, because you've got energy retailers, you've got distributors, you've got people who transmit the electricity, and then you've got the generator side. So we've talked a little bit about what's happening in that retail side. Let's go to the generation side, because there's something really interesting happening where up until now, well, up until a few years ago, generation was dependent on the price of the fuel you had to burn or do whatever in order to get the energy output. Now there's this new thing coming in that's following Moore's law, which is the PV cell and stuff like that. Where do you see the tipping point with PVs? Because they're already creating disruption. You see that in Germany, but there must be a point where, a bit like what we were talking off air, where, my observation, you can't buy a non-flat screen TV anymore.
Right.
How far away are we from the point where everyone will have a PV or have the ability to put a PV onto their house?
Well, we've reached the tipping point in some places around the world, wherever there's a lot of sun, and it's a little more southern exposure than the UK maybe. But we've reached the tipping point in some of those locations. But price of solar panels decreased 70% in the last 5 years. And as you said, you're right, it follows Moore's law. So expect another 70% drop. And we're not even talking about manufacturing capacity bringing price down, or changes in the technology that will reduce the footprint, or sprayable solar onto different parts of car roofs, or et cetera. This solar technology is going to become relevant. It'll never replace baseload. I don't believe that solar is going to create a death spiral, but solar is going to disrupt the industry significantly. And when coupled with storage, solar becomes extremely relevant. I think you were saying off screen that some solar panels are actually coming with storage attached.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we've seen that. Yeah. And when that happens, and this is so complex, we're jumping around a little bit, but it's fascinating when you think about it. The other thing that has is it has a huge effect on the distribution grid, which was designed to go that way, and now it's kind of doing this, and you see all those examples on many slides about load curves, and who's going to build this new grid?
Well, it's not a new grid.
Right.
The existing grid is being made more resilient. We've been talking at these shows about smart grid for the last decade. So the grid is being modernized and sensors are being added. If you think about just a smart meter network, it's analogous to putting sensors at the end of your fingertips, nose, ears. We now can see what's happening on that grid much better, and there's companies that are doing advanced analytics like C3 next door to you, and they're showing data can help you optimize and manage the grid. Similarly, that real-time data can allow you to see solar, see storage, and start to overlay, I'll call it a new grid on top of the existing one. But it will be data-driven, and you have to have intelligence at the edge. You can't have a static control room trying to monitor and manage that new grid, but it'd be an augmented grid, a more modern, more digital.
And this is where this whole conversation about IT, OT convergence kind of comes in as well, because everything needs to be real time. You can't have this isolated.
You're not pulling the great big levers that you used to pull 20 years ago. You're managing electricity at a finer endpoint, and as such, you can't have human interaction doing that management. You have to trust machines to do it.
So let me ask you another question, because I've seen all these slides, and the German market is always used for obvious reasons, and that's not the point of the question. But I've seen a number of slides where you've got, this is what used to happen. So you've got the base load bucket, and then you've got a little wave on top, which is renewables, and then you've got the new line where the baseload bucket is exactly the same, but renewables are doing this. So my question is, surely, and what's wrong in the market construct that that baseload bucket isn't being reduced if we're having these huge, it's been reported well, overcapacity. But there must be something inherently wrong. Are we building the wrong type of baseload? Do we need more sort of high ramp baseload rather than coal? And
Well, I think actually storage will become the differentiator that takes the renewable and starts to make it look more like baseload.
right,
So I think over time, we still have to manage and maintain the existing fleet of assets we have. It's imperative for utilities to manage those assets, whether it's transmission, distribution, or generation, more effectively, and that's around asset management, digital asset management. But I think storage will be the tipping point that creates that new diagram that you're going to see in 2016 to 2020.
yeah. So that baseload thing will be exactly the same, but there'll be maybe another green layer over the top of it, and say this is being dealt with by storage and so on.
Storage technology is going to also follow Moore's law.
And that as well is interesting, because where do we put this storage technology? Because there's debate at the moment about grid scale storage, and then you've got the distributed storage where and you've got companies like Tesla who are going to drive down the cost of these batteries because they're building a gigafactory. I mean, it's not broken ground yet, but some state in America is going to have this gigafactory. I mean, I'm not going to go on because I'll take up the whole time formulating the question.
It's okay.
But how is the storage thing going to manifest itself, or is it just going to be everywhere? Is it going to be pervasive?
It'll be pervasive.
Right.
If you think about it, if you have an option to have storage in your household that gives you security for 4, 16, 24, 48 hours in the event of a storm, and it's affordable, you would probably put it there. Okay. Similarly, businesses and factories can use storage to fill up the storage when the renewables are on, or in the evening when electricity prices are cheaper, and use that for the manufacturing process in the day. So we'll see it at residential, we'll see it in industry, and we'll see it out in the grid to allow the utility to effectively manage the grid better. So it's going to be pervasive.
So if we then jump into this new world for a second, and let's imagine we've got a street and everybody's got their batteries and all that sort of stuff. The commodity that utilities are making money off at the moment is actually decreasing in terms of the flow. And if the entire business model is about, I justify the investment to my shareholders about how much of this stuff that I sell, that's going to be a bit of a problem. We're probably going to have to go back to a world where this entire street is paying a sort of standing connection charge.
That's a feasible model. I mean, that's possible. I think really what we're looking at is back to the previous question, though. The utility can't survive just selling the commodity. They have to be a services company. So if you have a truck in the street, it can manage a pole, a line, or a solar panel, or a boiler. So they need to change the relationship. I truly believe utilities need to start to have a rich experience with their end customers and get into the house.
Maybe they need to stop calling themselves utilities and go through a rebrand or something like that.
That'd be a great exercise. Maybe next year in the interview I could come back and we'll see if there's a new term for the industry.
Well, that would be great. And on that note, Perry, we'll leave it because we've come to the end of our time. I feel like we could go on. I feel like we've only touched the tip of the iceberg. Maybe if we have time, we'll drag you back in during the show. But thank you as well for watching. We're going for a bit of a record, Perry. We're going to do 55 of these things this year. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. And we're going to also write this up in a bit more detail. So if you're watching this online, there'll be a whole lot more information below the video. So thanks again for watching.